now call the Plan Commission meeting of October 24th, 2023 to order. Roll call, please.
Anna here.
Grillo here.
Kipczynski here.
Kavich here.
Guzikowski here. Oldani here.
Chandler here.
It'll get us to the minutes of October 10th, 2023. Everybody please take a look. Satisfied? There's no discussion, omissions, errors, or corrections. Motion, please.
Guzikowski makes a motion at the minutes from October 10th, 2023 be approved.
Anna seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Christine.
Hannah, aye.
Grillo abstains.
Kipczynski, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski.
Oldani abstains.
Chandler, aye.
Okay. Item 4, review and discuss report on recent Common Council actions. That we had none. Item 5, review and discuss report on recent Board of Housing and Zoning appeal actions. We also had none. And item 6 is review and discuss a report on the recent quarterly Parks, Recreation, and Commission actions. We will see that on November 14th, 2023 this year. That will get us into item 7A, new business, and that's consideration of a conditional use permit submitted by Martin Ventura, UW-Madison Extension, Milwaukee County, for a conditional use for community garden plots for rent on the property at 800 East Forest Hill Avenue. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property is currently zoned Park District. The request is for garden plots for rent, and it's actually formalizing the establishment of these garden plots, which occurred back in 2012. Unfortunately, that was under a prior administration, and it didn't go through the local review process. So this is just basically requesting that these gardens be formally recognized. There are approximately 40 garden plots for rent, ranging from the smallest at about 20 by 20 to an average of 30 by 30. There are 3 what are called micro farms, and those are considered farm incubators. So these are for small scale farms to basically get established. And these are the plots that are on the property. Now this is 9 acres of the total property. The county owns several acres in this area. The distance from the nearest garden plot to Forest Hill is still over 200 feet. And there are certain garden plots that kind of rotate in terms of being cultivated. So there are some that appear on here that were not used last year. Those are actually indicated, excuse me, in purple. So the ones that are green are the ones that were active last year. And this is split up into 2 areas. On the left is the northern portion. I should mention that all of these areas have setbacks in consideration of the wetlands that are in the area. There are also floodplain and floodway areas, and although gardens are allowed, structures still need to be outside of those floodway areas, and these locations do. So in terms of structures on the property, there are very few. One is a wash pack station, which is at the northern end. Basically, it's a portable hand washing station. And then at the southern end, there's a garden shed. There are portable restrooms that are only on site between April and October, and then they're removed. They're regularly serviced. And there's an information kiosk that's posted near the restroom facility, which again is more than 200 feet from the road. We don't have hours of operation, but it's basically kind of a dawn to dusk kind of thing. And it's, again, in operation from about April to October, although you might see people out there getting things ready or putting things away during the off-season. And there are no minimum parking requirements for this particular use. There's no need for formalized parking. Most of the parking actually occurs near the plots that are being rented. So it'll be up to the landowner, Milwaukee County, or the extension program to ensure that parking is managed on site. With that information in mind, there is a suggested motion for consideration on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before we go to the commission, there's a few folks that would wish to speak. I'll go in the order I received them. So Martin Ventura, applicant first, please. I will need your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Martin Ventura, and my address is 3415 North 55th Street in Milwaukee. I'll keep my comments brief. They are essentially to thank the Planning Commission for their assistance and context in this process, which has frankly been confusing. I'm an entomologist and not a city planner, so much of this was brand new to me. I want to correct one item within our submitted materials, which is that the dimensions of the wash pack and shed are to be designated in feet and not inches, as indicated by my shorthand. So I apologize for that error. They're actually not tiny structures. And with that, I would welcome any questions that the commission has of me or of the program.
While we have the applicant up, if there's any commissioner that has a question. Anything?
I do have a question. So for this use, is this the second year that this has gone on using these different garden plots?
So in fact, this garden has been in its current form, give or take a few of those annually cultivated plots since 2012. So this is a long-standing use, which Senior Planner Papelbon alerted me to our having been out of compliance early this year, and as an enthusiast for due diligence, I have been working to correct it since.
Thank you.
I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Next, we got Thomas.
Thomas Schultz, 2040 East Forest Hill Avenue. I own the property that's directly to the west, the wooded area. There's actually two little lots there, but the woods are connected to my property on 2040. So it abuts the easement that this garden is on. The garden is an exceptional use of this space and this property. I've lived there for quite a while, and I've never had any complaints about the operation. However, the one comment I'd like to make is I think the seasonal water supply should be improved. It's currently just like a PVC flexible pipe that goes from the hydrant that's by the easement, and it kind of winds around and goes back into the property. And it's often leaking, and it's just probably not the best solution to get irrigation up to that property. Something more permanent is probably would be better for that property anyway. But I have no complaints. I have no objection to the use. They've been exceptional stewards of the property in the time I've lived there.
Okay, thank you for the input, Thomas. Next, Meg Clark.
Hi, good evening. My name is Meg Clark. I'm at 829 Manitoba Avenue in South Milwaukee, so a neighbor of Oak Creek. I had gardened at Rawson Avenue. This year is the first year at Forest Hill. Every day I'm in such appreciation and gratitude for having the opportunity to be out there and grow affordable, nutritious, fresh things for my husband and myself, and get some exercise at our age and learn how to be a part of this amazing community. Thank you for the opportunity to do that this year, and we're hoping for years to come. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Meg.
Thank you.
And lastly, Jack.
My name is Jack Lavin, 1007 East Townsend Street, and I am one of the few fortunate micro farm gardeners out there. My cousin began probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and it has just been this pretty amazing oasis, minutes from the city, just an incredible space, and I don't really have much more to say. Seeing your responses and listening to you, I don't think I need to try to sell on the benefits to the Oak Creek community of a community agriculture program. But I would like to just say a few things. I really enjoy just your general vision statement, you know, beginning with seeking to be a regional leader. And as we're moving forward as this experiment of human beings, I mean, we're currently learning more and more about the benefit of nature and obviously like whole fresh foods. And so having that in the Oak Creek community really is a benefit to obviously us gardeners, but I think the homeowners nearby as well. Much different if there's Walmart or something. Nothing against Walmart, but I think it really adds a lot of value to the community. And then as far as the community goes, for years we were out there and there really wasn't much happening as far as other gardeners. And I realize now I don't understand fully the administrative stuff, but on the one hand it was kind of nice being ignored because it was this little solitude space, again, minutes from the city. But it was missing community. And once I heard that Rawson Avenue Gardens were closing and more gardeners were going to be coming, my initial response was a little selfish, you know? I was like, man, this is my little, you know, garden monastery sort of a thing. However, have already met some incredible people. I mean, we share phone numbers, share emails, talk about gardening techniques, and the increase of gardeners out there has really brought a lot of energy, and hopefully we're allowed to stay for a while. But I think this discussion out in the open is a good thing, because sustainability going forward for us as gardeners would not be possible without the full support and encouragement of the community, you know. And then finally, just going forward, looking to the future, being part of this South Shore area, I think we all know that water is important, and it will be more and more, and the real estate around the entire Great Lakes, if it's not already, will become probably the most expensive real estate in the world. Having community agriculture present will be and currently is a big draw for people. And I think that the water of the lakes is going to bring people here. Having agriculture and the opportunity to garden and being part of a community that is officially recognizing and supporting agriculture, I think really goes a long way in putting a real positive kind of taste of Oak Creek and just this region in people's minds. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Before I go to the commission, is there anybody else that wants to say anything? Possibly didn't fill out a slip. Come on up, sir. That's okay. We just need your name and address.
Check.
Whoop, make sure you're on the mic, please.
My name's Ken Sobchak, 777 North Van Buren. And I've been gardening at Forest Hill for 2 years. I've had a lifelong interest in gardening. It's an amazing opportunity for me. My grandkids are involved with me, and they're learning. I feed a lot of people. I'm a teacher, and I grew a lot of excess produce this year. I fed my students. I fed other people that work in our department, and many of them who are not paid well, and so it's a valuable resource for them. And I have a neighbor who works at Children's Hospital, and if I have excess, and I do, I give her a large box of produce, and she takes it to the hospital. And you know, you don't go to Children's Hospital and have a celebration, but it's something that lifts the parents' spirits. She just offers them vegetables, have a free shopping trip. And so I think that's a great benefit for the community. We've heard about all the advantages of growing our own produce. We're all pesticide free. We're not damaging the groundwater. We're not trucking lettuce from California. We can grow it right here in Oak Creek. So it's a carbon saving mechanism to have gardening in the community, and it just improves the quality of life for everybody, I think. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to work here, and Oak Creek's a beautiful community, and I want to thank the board here.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. We'll move on to the commission. Christine.
The only question or / comment I have is the irrigation system. The gentleman, he's talking about I'll say the PVC or whatever is out there is not really efficient for water, especially trying to produce and use the water efficiently. So it's kind of productive that. So if you have a certain irrigation system in place, that would be very helpful. Other than that, I have no comments. Thank you.
Dawn?
I'm a planning commissioner, but I also am the manager of the farmers market in the city of Oak Creek. And I would love to work with you next season. I think that'd be great for you to come out and talk to the community about what you're doing in that area. So we'll set you up. My phone or my email address is on the Facebook. Please have somebody reach out to me. Okay? Thank you.
Ashley?
No questions. Thank you.
Chris?
I have no questions either. I support this.
Don?
No questions.
Chauncey?
No additional questions. Thank you.
No, I can't add anything to it either. I'm glad everybody's so pleased with it. You know, we try to service everybody. We were a big farm community. It's changed somewhat over the years, but we really plan to keep open space and do something like this. I'm really glad that it's really grabbing a lot of momentum, and hopefully we can find other spaces as well to service a garden. I know it was a big blow when the county got rid of that. Maybe we can have more than one site. So, we can always keep looking. So, there's no further discussions, questions. Motion on 7A, please.
Oldani moves that the Planning Commission recommends that the Common Council approves a conditional use permit for garden plots for rent on the property of 1800 East Forest Hill Avenue after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Plan Commission's review at the next meeting, November 14th, 2023.
Guzikowski, second.
Roll call, beginning with Dawn.
Perillo, aye.
Ibczynski, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Okay. Good luck, folks. Item 7B, consideration of a minor land division lot line adjustment, and it's for a certified survey map for the properties at 8910, 8940, 8980 South Ridgeview Drive. Carrie.
Just a correction, Mr. Mayor, it's 9810, 9840, and 9880 South Ridgeview, just for the record.
Oh, thank you.
The properties that are under consideration for this lot line adjustment are currently zoned M1. One of them is subject to an existing conditional use permit. The proposal is to combine these, consolidate them into one lot that will have two buildings, one on the north, one on the south, with parking in between. The dimensional requirements for lots are met by the district, and this is directly related to a conditional use permit request, which is in the next agenda item. There's one requirement for an update, and that's on the signature page, and that's a minor adjustment to correct the Plan Commission secretary to the current secretary. On the screen is the proposed certified survey map, again, just showing the consolidation of the lots. There's also what's depicted on here as a proposed stormwater drainage easement. If this is all going to be one lot, there may be no need for that easement itself, since it would be a private stormwater system on a single owned lot. That's one recommendation, is that be at least considered. With that in mind, there is a suggested motion, excuse me, a suggested motion on the screen for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before I go to commission, does anybody want to say anything? Applicants, or you want to wait on questions? Signifying they'll wait. Okay. Chauncey, you're up.
No questions. Thank you.
Don?
No questions.
Chris?
No questions.
Ashley?
No questions.
Dawn?
Nothing for me.
Right, Christine?
Nothing here.
No, this is pretty straightforward on these 3 particular lots. So. Seeing no questions or discussion, motion on 7B.
Oldani moves that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Evan Veslich, North Investments LLC for the properties at 9810, 9840, 9880, South Ridgeview Drive be approved for the following conditions. 1, that the Plan Commission signature block includes the Plan Commission secretary. 2, that the technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordination, geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call, beginning with Ashley.
Shinsky, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Grillo, aye.
And item 7C is review request submitted by Ivan Vesjek. Sorry if I screwed that up. North Investments LLC for a conditional use permit for an automotive mechanic truck and trailer repair and truck parking on the properties at 9810, 9840, 9880 South Ridgeview Drive. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're talking about the same properties, which will be combined, obviously. And the proposal as was submitted was for auto body and automotive mechanical repair, which is a category in the code, and also truck parking. As we worked with the applicant and the representative, it became clear that there were other uses on the property that may require conditional use consideration by the Plan Commission. So those will be items to discuss tonight. On the screen right now is a conceptual site plan showing where the buildings are, where the existing asphalt is, and where the proposed detention pond will be. This is just a concept plan. Anything that happens on the property will also have to come back to the Plan Commission for review and approval at the site plan level, and that includes for any kind of fencing, landscaping, lighting, signage, etc. So turning to the proposed uses, we have an existing conditional use permit, as I mentioned earlier, on the property at 9880 South Ridgeview, and that was issued in 2018, and that was specifically for, under the old code, what was considered a transshipment depot facility, what we would now consider to be distribution. Also truck engine repair. That truck engine repair use was supposed to be limited to the vehicles that were owned and operated by the owner of the building at that time and owner of the property at that time. And the truck parking on that property was limited to 4 semi-trailers in the northeast corner. Over the years, we have, it's been established apparently that there are many more uses within that building. So that was a significant source of the questions and concerns that were raised by staff, is that we need to know exactly what is being proposed for the use of both buildings and the property. So for 9880, the building is accommodating more than just a single tenant. We have been informed as of yesterday that the tenants that had been flagged in the staff report as being uses that were not, excuse me, uses that were not allowed in the district, those leases will be terminated. And then there would be the remaining uses that would require potentially conditional use approval by the Plan Commission, specifically for the towing and outdoor storage for one of the tenants there. So that would be something for the Plan Commission to consider as an added use included in this conditional use approval. So we would have truck and trailer parking, we would have the repair services, and then we would have outdoor storage specifically related to those towing services. If those items were to be incorporated into the conditional use permit, that would be recommended for the Common Council to approve as well. There would be conditions and restrictions recommended by staff that would limit the area, the location, the amount, or particular types of outdoor storage that would be allowed there. So this would be in addition to the truck and trailer parking because it's specific to the towing services. So the concerning area for the towing is we do not recommend that it be allowed for junk or damaged vehicles, and we've been informed that there won't be any junk or damaged vehicles on site permanently. I think the clarifying language that would be recommended by staff would be that there would be no junk or you know, inoperable vehicles other than ones that would be in active either repair, maintenance, or transportation within reason. Those would not be stored there at all. So what we have is an average of 30 to 45 days on site for those vehicles that have been towed, and then they get sold at auction. That's a consideration for the Plan Commission as to whether or not that is an allowed or would be a recommended and approvable use there. Again, it would have to be rolled into the conditional use request. So a couple of other areas of concern that were included in the staff report include the parking, which we have a conceptual site plan. We've been out to the site. We've seen aerials of the site. It's still not entirely clear exactly how many parking stalls there are for the entire area. We have passenger vehicles that are parked in, you know, striped stalls, but we also have passenger vehicles that are parked in, what's the word I'm looking for? Not specified stalls, or unofficial, that's the word I'm looking for, unofficial parking stalls. We had some combination of passenger vehicles parking in the area that was supposed to be designated for truck and trailer parking. We've been notified that that's going to be rectified. There will be no passenger vehicles intermingling with that parking area for the trucks and trailers. And then any kind of broken down vehicles or anything like that would be removed from the site. But parking is still kind of a consideration because the code requires that all uses provide the minimum required parking. It's a cumulative number. Without knowing exactly what everybody's doing on these properties or knowing exactly what tenants will be there makes it a little bit challenging for staff to determine whether or not there's adequate parking on the site. So what I have on the screen right now is the submitted floor plan for the north building, which is 9810. This building is a little bit more straightforward because this has an intended single user, and that is for TNT Express, and they're a logistics firm. They have the trucking operation. They own the property. There are limited loading docks on the south side of the building, and interior to that large space is where they intend to do their truck repairs for their own vehicles. This is not going to be an operation that's going to be available to the public. And then there's, you know, smaller offices within there that are all for that specific user. However, on the east side of the building is where the fenced area is for the storage of the towed vehicles for that towing company. That was not something that was reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission, and it has a fence up right now. We've been told that there will be no other outdoor storage in there, and that includes getting rid of the shipping container that was identified by staff in the staff report as well. So that would be something that the Plan Commission would also have the ability to include in the conditions and restrictions in terms of the fencing type, the size, the location, and the opacity per code. The only thing that we'll need in order to determine other code requirements for this particular building are dimensions for the interior space, the square footage, and then just to work with the fire department to ensure that the space is utilized properly. We do know from Assistant Chief Mike Havey that this building is sprinklered. There is a suppression system. So there's no building on 9840, that's just parking and the proposed detention pond. 9880 has the smaller building, and this is the building that currently has the conditional use permit attached to it. We did have a couple of concerns with regard to this building as well. We only have an occupancy permit for a tenant that doesn't appear to be in the building any longer. So that would be something that would have to be cleared up. This building is also of concern to the fire department in terms of suppression, and it will depend largely on where the service area is, whether or not all of the requirements for fire codes are met there. So that's something that will have to be worked through with the fire department, and the applicant is aware. They've indicated their willingness to work with the fire department to address those concerns. But we will have to, address the other concerns outside of Plan Commission review, which include occupancy permits, et cetera. So as far as the other items that were in the bulleted list of staff concerns, most of these have been identified as areas to be addressed almost immediately, or at least prior to the end of the year. As far as landscaping is concerned, whenever the site plan moves forward, if it moves forward, the landscaping would be brought into compliance with screening materials being raised for effective screening from the freeway. As a reminder, the Commission's initial review and recommendation of the proposed conditional use permit is not an endorsement of any site, architectural, landscaping, or lighting plan that may be required as part of the final conditional use permit. And of course, a more detailed review of any of those plans required by the conditional use permit will be brought back before the Plan Commission, and that would be subsequent to the conditional use permit being approved. If the Plan Commission is satisfied with the information that has been presented, and that includes the corrective actions that were included at your workstations prior to this meeting, there is a suggested motion for consideration on the screen. I have highlighted the other conditional uses that would have to be specified by the Plan Commission if they were to be recommended for approval. If there are other considerations or other concerns, there is another option. You can hold the item until you have all the information that you feel is required. Or if you find that within the conditional use permit requirements, the findings, that this particular application does not meet those findings, those conditional use permit requirements, you could consider a denial or a non-recommendation to the council. So those are the options that were outlined in the staff report, but the suggested motion for approval is on the screen for your consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before we go on to the commission, as usual, applicant, you want to wait on questions or say something? Okay.
Gary Billington, 175 West Summerhill Place in Oak Creek. My role in this, my role with the city is generally in economic development. Every once in a while I get involved in tangential issues, and this is one of them. These folks are moving or trying to move from Franklin to Oak Creek. Last September, they purchased this property and unfortunately didn't do their homework and found out there were some things, as Carrie's done a yeoman's job here of explaining. The applicant is absolutely committed to making it correct. It's just a matter of knowing what to correct and how long they have to correct it. But I've been working with them for several months. Carrie, again, has done a great job of helping us understand what's required. And obviously, we have to meet codes, and we have to do whatever we have to do. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, stand by. See. Okay, Christine, you want to shoot first?
I have actually no questions, and I'll just say this for now. No questions.
I feel the same way. I think we got kind of a great overview on this, so I don't have anything specific.
Ashley?
I don't have any questions. I guess seeing this corrective actions is definitely a step in the right direction. I know we had reviewed this in pre-planning, and we did not have any of this information, so seeing this is definitely encouraging and a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Chris?
I would definitely defer to staff on this, so if it's the right steps for moving in the right direction, then that's what we should do, so I'd support that.
Don?
Yeah, I would say when staff has the amount of concerns here and we see their steps in the right direction, we've usually given something like this. I think in the past we've held just to give the applicant an opportunity to make it right and clean it up a little bit, and kind of that's the direction I feel like I'm going. You know, as long as, you know, they're willing to do the right thing, and it just needs a little work, I think. And usually I go with what staff's saying most of the time because they do the hard work. This is pretty extensive here, so I think I'm leaning towards a hold at this point.
Jossie?
I do have a question for Carrie. So the feedback that was provided, is that sufficient?
I think there are still a couple of questions that are outstanding. I think, as Ashley mentioned, this is a huge step in the right direction. And thank you so much for providing this, Gary, and for, you know, being the liaison for the applicant. There are just a few more questions, and the rest of the questions and the information that's forthcoming, we anticipate that to be submitted fairly soon. So I, at this point, would support the recommendation that Commissioner Oldani has mentioned, which is to hold the item to give the applicant enough time to present this additional information to the Plan Commission that's still outstanding.
Thank you.
Okay. Just real quick, I was out at the property some months ago. I forget exactly when it was, early spring, something like that. Kind of a work in progress, as it was stated. All the information was pretty accurate. There were multiple businesses going on there that maybe shouldn't have been in there. There were two buildings, so it gets a little bit different. There's a north and south building going on. One's with TNT Enterprises. The other one is owned by them, but there's some work to do. We'll put it there. There was, you know, for example, on the south building, there's some truck repairs going on there that are non-TNT, but there's some bays there. That building is unsprinkled, and there is no suppression system for anything. And there's some general offices that shouldn't be there. We don't know if we got a fire-rated wall. There's some things to clear up there going forward. I agree with the commissioners. I don't think we're far off. I think these corrective actions are a great step in the right direction. I do believe the applicants want to get this right and get on with things. Just unfortunately, we got to backtrack some things, and there's too many holes and maybes to go with forward right now. So I think a hold would be appropriate.
The only request the applicant has is to fully understand exactly what needs to be done, however Carrie decides to make that, so that they can go ahead, make those assessments, and then decide where they're going from there.
Right, and the best place to do that is with our staff.
So
public.
that's all I would ask, is that we get that list so we know where we are. If the building on the south has to be sprinklered, that changes things a lot, because that's a very, very expensive thing to have to sprinkler a building. So that might change the direction of where they go with that building.
I don't
But we
claim to be an expert with it, but
we have to
obviously
comply with the codes. So we understand.
Assistant Chief Havey would weigh in on that.
Yeah, I'm going to meet with him. Yep. So.
Okay.
I actually have another question for Carrie. So, in addition to this list so far that you have, would you think that adding a comment that this steps that they need to address will be permanently taking place, so they don't go back and add it?
That would be part of the conditions and restrictions.
Okay. That's their understanding.
Yep.
Okay.
But again, to the point I made, they have to see what has to be done, and that could change the course of what they do in that south building. If it becomes cost prohibitive to put an entire sprinkler system in, or whether the firewall that's in there now from an old, it was grandfathered. Those buildings were built in the, 70s, Carrie? 80s? I don't know. I don't remember. So we have to determine that, look at the cost feasibility of it, decide what to do or not do. So.
Like, for example, this nail salon, like now you're going to terminate their lease, but later on they cannot come back.
Correct.
Another time. So
See,
It's
that's the
permanently.
understanding.
Yes.
Yes, so
right.
the issue is going to be that we're going to have to be very diligent in terms of putting together conditions and restrictions that are very clear
Yes.
and very concise, and spells out exactly what needs to happen. Now, we do have the code. The code still states what are conditional and permitted uses for the district.
Okay.
So we just still have that. It has to comply with code, whether it's in the conditions and restrictions or not.
Okay.
But to be clear with these uses, we will definitely have things in the conditional use permit that say very specifically that uses allowed on this property are only allowed by the district and as per these conditions and restrictions. So again, if the Plan Commission is comfortable with the uses as we've mentioned, which would be the repair, the truck parking, the outdoor storage, those would all be specified as being allowed uses in addition to the permitted. But anything that's considered a conditional use, you'd have to amend the conditional use permit. Anything that's considered a prohibited use is still going to be a prohibited use. But we will try and make those conditions and restrictions very clear.
Okay, good. Thanks.
So is my understanding then if it is, did you say hold? Then we'll basically know what those conditions are, Carrie, and then we can.
At the next meeting, we can hold it to a date to be determined, or
Okay.
Carrie, we'll go off
Typically-
Carrie's suggestion.
Yeah, typically
Okay.
the hold is, if the Plan Commission recommends to hold this item, we're holding it for more information before the recommendation. That does not bring us to the next step, which are conditions and restrictions, which are based on all of the submissions. So it kind of pushes this out another 2 weeks. So we'd be holding this until November 14th. And then the conditions and restrictions would be reviewed at the November 28th meeting.
Okay, I understand. Wasn't sure how that worked.
Yeah.
Good.
But you'll get a copy of the draft conditions and restrictions
In
prior
the
to
meantime,
that
though, I
meeting.
am going to meet with the fire department to make sure we understand what their
Yeah.
requirements are, because that may change.
Right.
what-
And
to your
that would change the conditions and
Yes,
restrictions as well.
I got it. Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Okay.
I want to make sure I'm understanding. So you're requesting more details of what should be done, yet, to my understanding, that's the conditional use that will be created, but that's after the next meeting. So the items that are in the report today, is that sufficient to tell you specifically what needs to be done? So you'll know your speaking
In
points?
the corrective actions, there's dates on when we're going to have those accomplished. But we still, like Carrie said, we still have to meet with the fire department on that south building to determine whether it has to be sprinklered. That will determine when we come back what exactly is going to be in that building. Because if they say it has to be sprinklered, then that tenant will probably have to be removed and another tenant put in his place.
And staff will continue to work with the applicant and the
right?
representative.
Did I get that right?
So we will continue to work together to make sure that we have all the information to present to the Plan Commission at the next meeting.
So we'll, work in progress.
What I just want to make sure I'm understanding again. So the information you were just speaking to, that's the details that you provided, the corrective actions for CUP application, that's what you're referring to?
Yeah, those will be accomplished.
Okay. My question was more geared towards the information we have in our packet, because it lists out all the things that are questionable in the area. So I wanted to see if
Most of those are be addressed with the corrective actions. Some of them we will have to wait to get the review by the fire department to determine on that south building whether that building has to be sprinklered, which could change what conditional uses are in that building.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because the sprinkler systems are extremely expensive to install, and it just might not be economically feasible. So we'll have to. Is it Mike?
Mike Havey.
Mike Havey. We'll work with. I'll meet with him on site.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. No further discussions, questions? Seeing none, motion?
Oldani moves to hold item number 7C for future consideration.
At the November 14th meeting.
For sure. Okay, for future consideration at the November 14th Planning Commission meeting.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call beginning with myself. Aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Shinsky, aye.
Okay, good luck, guys. Item 7D, minor land division lot line adjustment. Review a certified survey map submitted by Richard Barrett. B Boulevard, configuring the properties at 7951, 7971 South 6th Street. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, I apologize. This is not the correct location map.
Oh,
it needs to be in Drexel Town Square, where we are. So this is going to be just north of the existing Emerald Row building. So, yep, pay no attention to that map. It is a lot line adjustment between the two properties. It's not really changing anything in terms of dimensional requirements for the district or for any other requirement. It's literally making a line that is curved into a straight one. It is related to the site plan review request, which I had in the staff report as being next on the agenda item in the agenda. That actually has been held in order to get some more information and clarification on the plans. So that's on November 14th. There will be some minor corrections that will be required for the certified survey map. But on the screen right now, showing you basically what's on pages 1 and 2 of the CSM that's in your packet. So again, this is reconfiguring the shared lot line between the existing Emerald Row property and Lot 3, which will be a future phase of Emerald Row that will be brought before the Plan Commission on November 14th. The right-hand side is showing a selection of the easements that are affecting these two properties. There is a question regarding just the visual representation and the notation of an easement that is on a third page that I did not include in the slides. But that information has been presented to the applicant for their consideration. So there is a suggested motion with a couple of conditions on the screen for consideration. Just a clarification, BLVD is an acronym for Barrett Low Visionary Development. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Anybody from Barrett Low want to say a few words? Come on up, sir. You'll need your name and address.
Good evening. I'm John Casucci, 7461 Lakeside Heights Court in Oconomowoc. I'm the land surveyor and here to answer any questions you may have about this land division.
Okay, stand by. Chauncey?
No questions, thank you.
Don?
No questions.
Chris?
No questions.
Ashley?
No questions, thank you.
Don?
No questions. Nothing here.
Nothing from Christine? No, this is pretty standard business. We've kind of been through this before. So, but thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Excellent. If there's no further discussions or questions, motion on D, please.
Oldani moves that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Richard Barrett, BLVD, for the properties at 7951, 7971 South 6th Street be approved with the following conditions. 1, that all easements clearly shown and labeled on the map. 2, that the Plan Commission's signature block is updated to the current Plan Commission's secretary. 3, that the Common Council signature block includes an area of the approval resolution number. 4, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call, beginning with you, Chris.
Guzekowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kipchinsky, aye.
David, aye. Okay,
I could say one quick thing.
Yes.
It'd be nice if the website made it easy to find who the new secretary is of the. I know that. Both CSMs had the same comment because you're hard to find. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. On to 7E, and that is a rezone plan unit development requested by Jason Atsky, St. John's Property, Inc. to rezone and establish a planned unit development on the property at 517 East Rawson. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request to rezone and establish a quasi-commercial / light manufacturing planned unit development on the property. It is currently zoned A1, which is limited agricultural. The original request, as mentioned in the staff report, was for a combination of a B4 and M1 PUD. After some consideration by staff and taking a look at the requested uses, it became clear that the LM1 district would capture most of the uses that were requested. It's on your workstations what the highlighted requested uses were, and including some concerns that staff had raised for including all of those as being allowed uses. We do have other split zone PUDs in the city, but those are challenging for staff to administer, especially when we have so many uses that are being proposed for consideration on the site. So staff has recommended, and I believe that the applicant is in concurrence with LM1 as being the base zoning district with a couple of considerations for Plan Commission to rule on. And those are the allowances for uses that may not be specifically allowed in the LM1 district, but are more of a light commercial B4 typical type of use. And we'll get into those use discussions in a moment. The comprehensive plan does call for this area to be redeveloped with business park uses, so this is in conformance with that requirement. Excuse me. On the screen right now is the concept development plan for the site. It includes 4 multi-tenant buildings. The building that is closest to Rawson Avenue, which would be on the right side of the screen in this slide, that would be mostly retail / commercial uses. So your typical uses that might be found in a B4 district. And that's kind of where we have some concerns with regard to how those uses and the rest of the buildings, which would be kind of your flex use buildings, similar to what's across the street at 140 East Rawson, and the compatibility of those uses, especially considering the uses in the neighborhood, which includes residential. So some of those areas of concern mentioned in the staff report as being challenges with how many and how varied those uses are. General retail of more than 100,000 square feet, which is listed as a conditional use in the B4 district. Now, none of these buildings are 100,000 square feet, but we still have a use that would be potentially incompatible. Same with the multi-tenant shopping center, animal daycare and recreation, kennel boarding facility and shelter, funeral parlor with cremation services, hotels of any kind, motels, drinking establishments, auto repair, car washes, equipment sales, vehicle sales, brewery, winery, distillery, contractors, shops and offices and yards, heavy manufacturing, motor freight terminal, self-storage, warehouse, hospital, etc. Not all of those uses are going to be compatible, and certainly not all of those uses would be presented for Plan Commission approval in these tenant spaces, but these are some of the considerations for the Plan Commission when reviewing this particular proposal. It's also quite difficult to highlight exactly what uses would be allowed, and we do have very old PUDs that say these are the uses that are specified as being allowed. Anything else requires Plan Commission review. The challenge with that is code changes so many times that trying to specify an exact use that might be allowed for a property is almost impossible. That's why we have districts where we mention permitted and conditional uses as required. So again, the request for all of the uses, that would be something for the Plan Commission to consider, but staff is recommending a base district of LM1 with a potential consideration for general retail uses up to, with the smaller category, not the 100,000 square feet, which I believe, unfortunately, was on a previous page that didn't get included in the exhibit. So moving on, this is a general development plan in progress. And the reason I say in progress is because, and we thank the applicant for their continued work with staff with regard to all of our questions and requests for consideration and future concept plans. We do have a development that is platted to the west of this property with half of a dedicated road. What is shown on the screen in red is a future build out of a public street connection that would incorporate that particular development. That particular development is actually a platted residential subdivision from 1928, 1929. Whether or not it gets constructed, whether or not that is kind of folded into a future development that would be similar in size and scope and use as this particular development, that all has to be considered with this road. So the general development design, as presented in the previous slide, does provide for these internal roads, parking, landscaping, etc., all of those considerations that are typical as part of a business park type development. But again, we need to accommodate the expansion of any kind of similar use to the west. And on the screen right now is a concept landscape plan. This was informed by the neighborhood meeting that was held several months ago, in which there were some concerns by the existing neighbors. So some of those buildings were pulled back in order to allow for greater landscape areas, possibly berming, but more intense landscaping in those areas. So that's what this concept plan is showing. Again, any kind of initial recommendation of an approval of the PUD is not an endorsement of any specific plans. We do need to continue to work with the applicant to ensure that all the other code requirements are met. And if this is recommended for approval, any kind of site and building plan review would, of course, come back before the Plan Commission. So with that information in mind, we do have to have specific findings per section 170703A, as mentioned in the staff report. There are some staff comments with regard to those findings. And if the Plan Commission is satisfied with all of that information, we will need to have a little bit of, excuse me, guidance for staff to prepare conditions and restrictions, but that is included in the suggested motion for consideration on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. This time the applicant want to come up before we start?
Good evening, Jason Nikolsky, St. John Properties, 2000 Pewaukee Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin, 53188. As Carrie has mentioned, we applied for a PUD to try to alleviate some of the conditional use permits that we've been experiencing at the 140 East Rawson property, which is across the street. But with further discussions with staff, we do agree that LM1 zoning, with the exception of general retail service under 50,000 square feet, office uses, and a possible contractor shop / office to be considered as part of it in the PUD, would work out for what we're looking to do. All the majority of the uses, almost all the uses on page 2, we are not looking to do any of that. We aren't going to do hotels or funeral parlors. So, like I said, the LM1 district with a few of those other considerations would work out well for the property.
We'll get to them with the commission. Is there anyone in the audience? Obviously, you folks have waited around. Does anybody want to make any statements before we go to the commission? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Mike Piowski, 251 East Rawson Avenue. I live right across the street from the St. John's at 140 Rawson Avenue. and I do have some concerns. One of the things that you need to take in consideration is you're dropping this business right in the middle of homeowners. If you look at the zone where those homes where this butts up against right here, you got at least 14 homes that are going to be on one side, actually 13 homes that are going to be right on the lot line of these businesses. And I can tell you this, I live across the street from this business, and it does affect how your living space is, and there's a lot of noise that's generated by these businesses. And part of that is because if you have people that you're going to have hundreds of cars going in and out that property every day, you're going to have, just like I have, and you can't help it, but we have an exercise place by us. People come with their fast cars and they like to rev their engines and show off their friends' motorcycles. And I don't have that 100 feet behind me. So these businesses do affect the homeowners, and you have to take that in consideration. When they build these things, there's going to be noise. There's going to be lights. Snow plows. We have snow plows. They come across the street. They plow in the middle of the night. Backup horns going on. Garbage trucks coming in every day, picking up garbage. That's the noise. You have semis coming in there. You have all this activity all the time, and that does affect the living space. And you got to remember now, these people here that was a farm field. They don't have had any of that. This will drastically affect their quality of life because they'll have this here. And if you consider this, and up to now, this commission hasn't denied St. John's anything. Everything he asked for that was across the street by me, that we came up with concerns, it was allowed. And a lot of these things weren't taken into consideration. So that's the thing that you have to understand. If you look at where you're putting this thing, it's right in the middle of homes there. So that it's going to change everyone's lifestyle over there. And if you decide to do this, should make sure that the berms and it are high enough. These homes aren't affected by this. You got to remember, he's going to have, putting landscaping little bushes there is not going to stop the lights. It's not going to stop the noise. You're going to need something substantial to protect
That's
the home.
understood. That's why they come through planning with this, so we can see their plan and what they're planning.
But we understand. I'm just trying to explain to you that I've been seen this before, and a lot of these things aren't taken into consideration with the lights, the noise, the trucks, the backup horns, all these things that are going to affect the plows dragging across the street when they're plowing. All this stuff affects the homeowners. So I just you have to think about that. How would you like that if somebody built something like that in your backyard? And this is going to be a busy place. It's a busy place across the street for me with all the businesses, and now they're putting up the third building. And the traffic, now on Ross Avenue, there's going to be more traffic going in and out. So it's going to change everything. So this is not just one small little dentist office or something like this. This is a major complex will be hundreds of cars and lots of things going on.
There's traffic studies that'll come with it.
So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there another hand that went up? Yes, ma'am.
Marr, 612 East.
Just kind of pull that down and repeat that, please.
Norma Marr, 612 East Missouri Avenue, Oak Creek, and I'm one of the residents that are butting up against the farm. And our concern, there's 2 homes on Missouri Avenue, and at this point in time, I've been there 40 years, my neighbor's basement constantly floods whenever it rains or we have heavy snowfall with melt. and my home is surrounded by water. So we are wondering I don't see it addressed on that map we originally received, what the drainage what their resolution for that drainage is there.
Okay, well, first of all, if it's happening now, okay, chances are if they put in some sort of drainage system, it'll help correct that. But right now, it's an existing problem. So we have that documented before they came in. You know, and I don't mean to be mean, but we hear this all the time. Mm-hmm. They moved in and now I'm flooding, but there was 40 years worth of flooding or water issues there. Typically, and Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, as we do these plan unit developments and this, as the stormwater goes and things have gotten better, there's usually retention ponds and plans that actually help the area usually.
Well, it looks like the retention pond is on the other end of
They would take into account probably the whole topography of where the area is and where it currently drains. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I don't want to get deep into it because we're not that far, but if they wanted to put a building there, for instance, they'd have to make sure the wetlands are there, and then it goes back, the water's controlled back to where it is, to the holding pond. That may not affect your neighbor. It probably, if it's going to affect your neighborhood, I would think it would be more positive than negative, but I'm not an engineer that way. Ashley, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I agree. The stormwater on this property will be reviewed at a later date, but obviously will be taken into consideration. Those ponds are meant to manage the water on the entire site, so as mentioned, it will likely improve. You know, it'll be concentrated to that pond, so stuff that may have just sheeted off directly to your property now is going to be contained and treated in that pond. So all of that is taken into consideration. Looking at discharge rates, whatnot, so all of that is reviewed. Creek's got very strict standards when it comes to release rates and whatnot, and reviewing the drainage.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else before I go to the commission? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lena Ham. I live at 7279 South Shepherd Avenue. So my back deck in my backyard looks directly across Quincy Street and to what is now a field. I have owned the property for 7 years and chose that location to move from a different city to raise my children because it was quiet and it was safe in a very small neighborhood. I am not interested in having a large commercial business park type environment right next to the neighborhood where we live, where my kids are riding their bikes and we're walking our dog and that sort of thing. The noise is obviously a concern, as well as living in the middle of a construction site for however long it takes them to develop the property. So being one of the people that would be affected along with my children, I'm not interested in living next to those businesses or having all of the traffic that would come along with them, right? Like, we have no control over who's coming and going, and if the roads do connect to the subdivision, that obviously would bring a lot of people that really have no business driving through our neighborhood right past our houses, and would be a potential safety concern for a single mother. So I just ask that you take that into consideration.
Okay. If I'm reading this right, the projected roads that they showed would not go to your subdivision, they would lead back to Howell, correct?
The road would not lead to Howell, it would go west. There is a platted subdivision, and when I say subdivision, it's not developed.
It's not developed.
Yeah.
It would not go east.
But we are the very next turn. So with a large development, with that many tenants and that size coming back further even past my house, it's very likely that there would be traffic from that development, even just people confused or driving around checking things out. It's a very quiet, very safe place to live, and my neighbors and I appreciate that. That's a lot of the reason why we have the property that we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. I think yes, ma'am. Come on up.
I'm at 7275 South Quincy, so that pond is in our backyard. We went to the previous meeting, and I got the impression that it was going to be smaller businesses that would go in those buildings, like the ones on that are on Rawson now. But did I hear right? Somebody said something about a hotel or?
No, that would not be allowed.
Okay. The one thing I want to say to this gentleman is at that meeting, and he was there, the alderman said, there's going to be something built behind us. So I don't know if we don't approve something like this going in our backyard. Is there, in fact, at some point, something else that's going to go in there? No matter what we say, eventually something is planned by the city for that property. Am I right?
The city necessarily doesn't plan it. We plot out the city for what we think would be appropriate. And for years, it's been a residential subdivision, which, for whatever reason, never came to reality, whether it was cost effectiveness or what have you. So the people that actually own the land come to the city with a proposal for what they wish to put in. And actually this, if it was M1, could be heavy manufacturing, a factory, and trucking. In the LM1 that's being proposed, you have a much narrower scope of the type of businesses. Exactly, not exactly, but just what you see across the street at St. John's property on Rawson. They take a tenant spot, maybe they'll take two, but for the most part, you don't see large trucking operations, things like that. You might see some light manufacturing, some things like that, but it could be anything from a medical lab to just an office space to anything like that, like you see in St. John's. I was in St. John's a few weeks ago. There's a variety of different things going on at St. John's, but nothing where they're heavy manufacturing or doing anything quite like that. So it's really up to the property owner to come to the city and propose something, and we see if it's acceptable. And this is why we go through these exercises, because we're well aware we abut and affect a subdivision this way. But no matter where we put something, it always butts something. So, we try to transition that sometimes with multifamily or things like that. In this particular case, they acquired the land, and this is what they're trying to do. So the task at hand right now is does it fit, and how do we make it fit? And try to make sure we protect your interest as well as serve their interest as well. If that made any sense. That was a long explanation.
Yeah. Okay, did I hear right where you showed that road on the west side of the property? Did you say there's going to be a subdivision going on the other side?
That's what's plotted, Carrie. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. There's a platted subdivision, but that's from 1928, 1929. There's no plan for any of those lots to be developed at this time. In fact, those lots are quite small. But if at such time somebody were to come forward and say they wanted to build on there, those lots are in existence right now. The roads would have to be constructed in order to serve that lot, so that's why we're showing this future road plan with that connectivity in there.
Because they're already on Howell, there's already some like tall business buildings. I'm not sure perspective it is from like our backyard to Howell, but there's a couple like what I would consider it being business park buildings.
You mean Mons Court?
Pardon?
Mons Court.
I don't know what's called.
The big white ones with the green trim.
Yeah. So you're saying there might be like at some point there could be a subdivision.
Somebody could propose that.
Okay.
Somebody could propose a multifamily. They could come in and ask to have it rezoned as well.
There's some process that would go along with anything that develops on the property to the west, except for a single-family residential development, because it's platted for that right now. So anything other than single-family would require several processes that would have to come back before the Plan Commission and the Common Council.
I just had one question for Jason. At the meeting previously, we were told they were, I think he said it was required that they have, I think it was 33 or 35 feet from our lot line to where their buildings start, but they were going to give us like 85 feet. Since then, I've heard it went back to 30-some feet.
You'll have to be on the mic, Jason.
I mean, it makes a big difference, that
Sure
extra
does.
50-some feet. And having, like he pointed out with the lights and the noise, having something larger as a noise buffer, you know, would be nice. But that's all.
Jason?
Again, Jason Akilski, St. John Properties, 2000 Pewaukee Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin. We did decrease the size of the building to increase the buffer to 85 plus feet, so it goes 85. It increases as you go back to give more green space between the building and the residential properties to the east. And then we did follow code to put in cedar fences where they're required, a grand landscape buffer between our property and the residential properties. Another note is that there is a wetland that kind of comes through between the two retention ponds. So the grades, you know, they all come from the west to the east, the residential lot. Our property would help kind of collect that water, but whatever comes from the west, I can't really stop going through the wetlands, you know, that might go to the residential area to the east, if that makes sense. So we'll have to leave those wetlands untouched. But there is a 85-foot distance between the buildings and the residential lot line.
Okay, so ma'am, it still stands at 85. Okay, thank you. Okay, guess we're ready to go to commission. Jossie, you ready?
I'm ready.
You're up.
I do have a question for the applicant. Okay, for these different proposed buildings, do you have a possible or several different types of tenants, just to give us an idea of which items on this list may apply to these buildings?
Yeah, we have a lot of interest at the 140 East Rawson property. We have a lot of the same interest, so we're looking to then expand into this proposed business area. But it ranges from office to, we have a lot of small contractor shops per se, like electrical contractors that are working out of their basement right now in their garage, that we'd be like a next stepping stone so they could get a small office and warehouse before, you know, they'd have to ultimately buy their own building, you know, if they got big enough. So we also have, you know, some small retail that's interested, a lot of like personal trainers looking maybe to do a little gym, some light manufacturers that would like to, I have a tenant interested. We don't have any space right now available, but he does water testing, so he's an engineer. So we need a space to run his employees, and then they do like water testing in a warehouse area. So he's really interested in maybe moving into these buildings once they're developed.
Okay, thank you.
Is that Chauncey? Mm-hmm. Okay, Don?
I have maybe for somebody who was at the meeting, it was mentioned that the alderman made a comment that something's going to be developed there. But do we have any statement from the alderman as whether he actually supports this, doesn't support this? Just out of curiosity.
I think the alderman for the district has indicated that if the concerns and the questions for the neighborhood, staff, and plan commission can be addressed through conditions and restrictions, that he would support the development, but I don't have anything formal for the plan commission to present.
Okay, and then a little bit more about the history. Dan touched on it. It's not currently residential zoned. It's agriculture, correct?
Correct, but I believe there is a house on the property.
Yeah, there, at least according to what I was looking at, there is. Yeah, it would be nice if that went, the alderman was probably right about something. Eventually there is probably something that's going to go in there. If it's not being farmed, it's going to be something. I would rather see it be residential myself. It would make more sense, especially if the west property ends up that way. I'm not so sure that will either. If I were the residents, I would certainly, try to get, because this will go to the common council if we approve this, and they still have to approve this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, that's just an item you'd have to take up with your alderman, because that's where it will go or die. And it is tough. It's if you don't have the residential going in there or any developer interested, and it's not being farmed, it's begging to be developed in one way or another. And yeah, it's a tough one. I'm not even sure how I feel about it at this point, but just trying to get a little history on that property. So I guess I don't have any specific questions at this time. Just kind of trying to noodle it out right now.
Okay, Chris.
Same for me. I have no questions.
Ashley.
No questions.
I have nothing.
I actually do have a question for the applicant. So is this property has been purchased for that specific reason, or was it existing and that was decided to be used for that purposes of being offices or retail, or?
Yeah, it was purchased for this specific reason, just because the community, the Oak Creek plan was to have this area be a business park. So,
with that originally being designated to be retail, before it was having all of those residents around it. Does it make sense? My question.
I think I can answer that question.
Okay.
The comprehensive plan identifies several properties in the area to be eventually redeveloped or developed into business park uses. And I believe that the intention for that designation in the comprehensive plan was for the assembly of a lot of those parcels to make one or maybe even phased business park developments in that area. This would be one parcel kind of in the middle of that area that had been identified as being potential for business park development.
Has the residents already been there before?
The subdivision to the east is existing. It's been established. The subdivision plat, as we've noted before, that is not developed, is from 1928 or 9, and there are a few homes that are still remaining along Rawson Avenue that are east or that are west of this development, proposed development.
Okay. So my question, or actually my comments to you or to the remaining here is, I don't really feel that it's the right location based on the retail list that was shown here. This is looking at the majority of that plan here. We have this little red box and all of those residents surrounding it. One of my main concerns when that mother was talking, if you have big trucks coming in for delivery, whether it's for like a small business that they are having like some wiring, some sort of boxes delivery, any sort of trucks coming in for delivery, and some small subdivision, almost 90% subdivision residents, it's just not going to be safe for kids who are accustomed just to drive or ride their bikes. So, like other plan commission have mentioned, I do not think this is the right location for that type of businesses out there. So it could be zoned for this, but maybe some other sort of businesses can be located, but not what has been mentioned or at least listed in that application, I guess. Does this make sense?
So I guess just a point of clarification, there's no connection being proposed between this development and the existing established subdivision to the east.
Yes.
So,
No,
yeah,
I have
there's nothing there.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, I'm not trying to
Okay.
refer to that, no.
What uses concerned you?
So there is a lot of residents surrounding. The majority of this area, okay, between Howell and Rawson, is almost 90% residents. It's residential area, okay? So, and this is a small space that was zoned to be retail, I believe. And from the list that I have seen here, it could be like a shopping center, daycare for animals, funeral.
That's
So
the list that we're not
you're
interested in.
not, yes, that you're
Okay.
not doing. So
Yeah.
what is the list that you are thinking about doing? Office buildings, right?
Yeah, similar to what we have across the street at 140 East Rawson. Like I said, they're like mom and pop shops that do, electrical. We have some offices. We have some fitness facilities. We have a laboratory. I do have someone that's interested, like I said, that does water testing and engineering. So he would need a small office space with a warehouse where he can actually do and complete the water testing. So small tenants like that.
Are there going to be any additional facility or any like outside storage that may
No, we
request
don't.
that?
We don't do outside storage on
Do you
our properties.
have any business operation that has already been set, or at least in your mind set for that type of business, like from 7 to 5 or?
I don't have any time set up for this property yet.
The reason why I'm asking is for the noise. So if the resident are concerned about the noise, typically the hours of operation.
Well, that
during
would be in
work-
conditions and restrictions.
Okay, so this is one, another concern would be to address the noise that I heard from other residents. So this is something else you need to be thinking about while, if that gets approved, moving forward, so. Other than that, I kind of agree with others here. It's just a little bit tough to make a decision here, I guess.
So I will just make a comment that in the base zoning district for the LM1, staff are not proposing that all of the conditional uses that are listed as conditional would be suddenly approved by the PUD. The permitted uses in the LM1 district would be permitted. Conditional uses would still apply. I heard the term contractor's office mentioned here before. I just want to throw out there that contractors' shops and yards and offices are not allowed uses in the LM1 district. And I think that what we have listed as our definition of contractor shop and office is not what's being requested. So I will just make that clear that what's really being requested is more of a light manufacturing type facility with an allowance for general office space and for retail uses, your general kind of commercial uses. That would be the recommendation that staff presents in the conditions and restrictions. So I just want to make that a little bit clear.
Which is perfect, and I don't know if this is something else. It's actually my recommendation, like what's happening in Drexel Town Square, which is 100% residential. You see a lot of like those coffee shops and all of those retails around here. I believe maybe it could be more like welcomed, but again, there's just pure recommendation.
Mike Bielski, 251 East Rawson. I'd like to comment on a couple things. One of the things you talked about, Steve, and what his feelings were about this project, and he was all for it. And he made a comment to us more like was a great tax base, and that way we could hire more because we need more police and more firefighters. And with this tax base, we could pay for that. So that was one of his comments. So you can see where he's at on this thing. The other thing with the thing that I was against, they put a ambulance service in across the street from us, which has, I'm going to guess right now, probably 6 to 8 ambulance parked there, and they're coming in and out of this property 24/7. They also have where they put a lab in, like they talked, a lab for testing for, tissue samples or whatever. That's a 24-hour-a-day service. When this property across the street was proposed to us, this was supposed to be a 9 to 5 operation. Now the ambulance service was agreed that they would not, because we live right across the street and there's only one entrance in and out of this place, that they would not turn their sirens on unless they went to Howell and Collins and our state. Well, most part they do, but a lot of times they don't. So sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, they like to light up their ambulances and obviously wake me and my wife up. I already called Superior MS once and mentioned that to him.
Well, I would not call Superior. I would call the city.
Okay.
That's the city's job to shut that down. So
Right.
if that's happening, don't call
Please,
them.
and
call
I
the
would
city.
appreciate, thank you, because when I called him, he got very belligerent with me and said, you don't have to call me and I'll take care of it. So these are the issues that when you let this type of operation in an area, these are the problems you're going to have. And who's going to take care of these things? Like I said, same thing with snow plowing.
Oh, yeah, we've been over that.
Yeah,
We've
but I'm
heard
just
all
saying,
your comments on
yeah.
snow
So
plowing
I
and
just
garbage
wanna-
pickup. We're
so
well aware of it.
So those are the issues you have when you allow this type of business within a residential area. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike. Okay, so I got the floor. Here is the deal. Yeah, this is an uncomfortable deal, but again, they have the right to develop the property and bring it forward to us. Again, we know it will affect the neighborhood. So again, they did have the meeting. Whether the alderman supports it or not, Don is ultimately right. You do want the alderman's support in it. How Steve views the pluses and minuses of it, that's up to Steve. He's not incorrect. It does provide a tax base, but that isn't why we do these things. We do these things because they're positive for the city. They bring in growth. They support families, and they utilize the property in some way, shape, or form. I myself, I'd love to see this be a single-family residential subdivision, without a doubt. Unfortunately, nobody's knocking at our door to do it. So what we have in front of us is this. When it comes to the businesses, and again, I don't want to reiterate what went on across the street at St. John's, there's a variety of businesses in there, and I did visit LabCorp. LabCorp actually is loaded with laboratory technicians. And basically what they do is they collect lab tissues from all over southeastern Wisconsin, and they bring them there when you go in for your blood tests and things of that nature. So they're collected. They work a second shift. They don't work 24 hours, but they do bring that in on second shift. They analyze that. They get them out and back to your doctor's office. And 1, 2, 3. It provides high-paying, nice jobs. It's a very actually passive use for that property there, other than the employees coming in and out. There's some courier trucks later in the day, but that's what I seen when I spent an hour and a half in the facility. There's just a variety of uses, and we're speculating what it could be. So just like St. John's Properties, we kind of learned our lesson, which is why we have it in the LM1 zoning, this one proposed. When we did the last one, we did, and Mike's correct, we did have to come back for conditional uses here and there, and it wasn't the way to do it. I think they built the property envisioning something else happening, and then it filled up with different uses. So most of these uses are pretty specific to a market, I guess I'd say. There's a dog rehab place in there, and just different things. We have these type of strip malls all over the place. I call them strip malls, much like you see on Rawson Avenue. They're medical. One could be, you know, nothing more than a storefront that sells supplies nuts and bolts to people, and people curry in and out of there. The one thing we would be sensitive to, and I agree to this, and I like to see that they move the buildings back 85 feet, is to really reinforce that east side of the property. Whether with trees, I don't know if berms will do it because we get into stormwater and how that all goes, but to really block those off. You know, the traffic stuff, I do understand it. You're right there. When we put things like this in, it's been my experience, some of the bigger problems, and you're right, we have to try to keep the noise down as best we can, and that's through conditions and restrictions and the lighting. Because by code, we have to meet certain lighting specs. We don't want them bleeding off, you know, light pollution going anywhere where we go. It remains to be seen based on the parking. You know, these businesses, we have some just to the south of us here. You'd never know they're in there. They're engineering firms, they're testing firms, things like that. So I don't want to get into speculation of what could or couldn't be there. I really do wish, you know, this was an easy meeting and this was a subdivision going in, but you know, we're not going to throw in a tire shop. It's going to be zipping off tires left and right, or a bowling alley or anything of that nature. So it's limited in the scope they can use, but we do have to be sensitive because we are on top of that neighborhood. Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, that street, and I know it's Quincy comes, and then it makes a funny turn, and it kind of comes out. I think that's Quincy. Then it goes up on that dead end, Ashley, you know, it kind of dead ends. That will never, that's Quincy also, ma'am?
Missouri runs
Missouri.
east west.
That'll dead end, that will never go through. So that would dead end with this park. Whereas if you put in a subdivision, that road would carry through. So not only that, they'd probably punch one through elsewhere, get a couple of exits in and out of there. So it's ambitious. There could be challenges with the land to the west yet, which is maybe a reason it hasn't developed in that parcel Carrie talked about from the 1920s. So it's a big parcel. But
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure all of your comments are getting on my.
Oh, I'm sorry. But currently, you know, where Mons Farm is, we do have Mons Court now, which is an industrial building, and it does about a few homes. It's kind of a natural extension almost of that business park. And I don't think it'll ever tie into Mons Court, would it, Carrie?
At this time, we don't see a future connection to Moncourt.
Okay.
When we looked at this and the feasibility of it, it would go on to existing developed properties on Moncourt. There's no right-of-way there. There's no easement there. There's really no good connection point to an existing area. But we did consider that.
Okay. So again, with the uses, they've eliminated a lot that could go in there, and I think they've eliminated the big ones. The logistical trucking, the heavy manufacturing, some of the other things that were brought up. As far as the retail goes, I don't know what, I'm not a retail expert, but again, it could be a small store that goes in there, sells something, but I wouldn't want to speculate what. You know, it would probably be something more like a beauty store, Sally's Beauty Supply Store, or something of that nature. Don't quite know. So, right now, what we are looking at really is the 19 acres and the proposed PUD. And just to give you a little background on the PUDs, they do these planned unit developments because staff has more control of them versus going into a general zoning of an industrial park. Like if you call this an industrial park, they can go in there and go, here's my building, this is what I'm doing, I'm allowed, and I go. PUD gives you far more control. Am I correct in that, Carrie?
I think you have conditions and restrictions that are specific to this development. So it's not just, oh, here's the code, you must abide by the code. There is still that requirement, but the PUD actually allows for a little bit more flexibility of design with the actual siting of the buildings, the parking, the setbacks, the landscaping, the lighting. It allows us to do a little bit more than the strict adherence to the code. So for instance, they still need to meet setback requirements, but in this case, they're adding landscaping as a buffer. Do we allow them to, you know, change something else to accommodate that? It just allows for a better flexibility of design. So while I appreciate the comments regarding, you know, not trying to speculate what types of uses would go in here, we do need to make sure that we are very specific about what is going to be allowed for the conditions and restrictions. So again, the base zoning district that we're recommending is LM1, so anything permitted in the LM1 would be allowed. We do need to make sure that Plan Commission is comfortable with general retail or general commercial, which could be any number of things for commercial retail under a certain square footage, which is a category in our code. And then if there are any conditional uses that are currently in the LM1 district that the Plan Commission would like to consider as being allowed just by right in this development, two things that I've kind of highlighted would be the research and development facility category. That's currently a conditional use in several districts. Then the other part would be most of these, the 3 buildings that are on the southern portion of the property will have some kind of warehouse component as part of an office for the most part. Is the Plan Commission comfortable with, well, if you have a retail component to it, or if you have a general office component to it, are you satisfied that the warehousing is secondary? Or do we have to consider warehouse distribution less than 200,000 square feet? Distribution in this case is not going to be, we are our own distributor of our own product, and therefore we have box trucks that take our product out to other places. We're talking about logistics firms, which is not what we're suggesting would occur on this property. So those are things that would be part of conditions and restrictions, but the uses are, the use categories are something that staff would need clarification on just to incorporate into those conditions and restrictions.
Okay. That is a lot. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Don.
You know, I am a little conflicted on this, and Dan was right about one thing. One is we can't just leave it an empty field so the residents can look at an empty field. That's just something we don't have the power to do. As great as that sounds, you want to look at the deer running through there. I don't blame you, but unfortunately, we just don't have the power to just keep it empty because that's what the residents want to look at. So, you know, I feel your pain in the respect we want to put what would be the most friendly for residential neighbors, and in this case, a multifamily is debatable if that's friendlier to single residents than something like light manufacturing. And the word manufacturing is kind of scary. It doesn't mean they're manufacturing something. It's just the term. Like Dan said, if it was another subdivision multifamily, they probably would connect roads there and be a lot more traffic than what this would be. I can just vow that whatever would go in here, I would be very aware that there's neighbors there. I live in the Chapel Hill subdivision, which is over by College and Pennsylvania. And several years ago, when they put in the post office distribution center back behind our subdivision, it was a big deal. Because you're talking about semis coming in there, and the residents, especially the ones right there, were very, very concerned. It turned out okay. You know, I don't know if that makes you feel better or not, but it turned out all right. And I'll admit it's not quite as close as this is going to be, but this is also isn't going to be a facility like that either. I think we're going to do our best to kind of keep this very low key and keep at least I am, going to keep the residents in mind when we talk about things starting to come in there. And I just want to say my piece about that.
Can I add a comment?
Yeah, go ahead,
as well.
Christine.
So, Don, I agree with you 100%. From my perspective, there is a win-win situation, especially for the applicant and the residents. If, and this is pure a recommendation, some of those retail can be like, again, a coffee shop, a daycare center, either for the pets or the for children, something the residents around the area will be walking to, it will be using, and so that will become their own community gathering. So if they can use it, you will be always busy because they live there, they want to come to you, and in the same token, they are not going to be concerned about someone mainly from the outside. Typically, someone will come from outside of their neighborhood, but at least it will be friendly to them and they will be able to use it on a daily basis. So that's something else just to put in mind when we think about the restrictions.
Yeah.
Just my little thoughts.
Is there any further discussion, questions? Okay, seeing none. Motion.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council that the property at 517 East Rawson Avenue be rezoned to LM1, light manufacturing with planned unit development after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared at the Commission's review at their next meeting, November 14th, 2023.
Grillo, second.
Roll call, beginning with Don.
Oldani, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Anna, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Shinsky, aye.
David Chai.
Guzekowski, aye.
So my advice is keep your communication open. You do have a developer that's willing to listen. He's already at neighborhood meetings. You will get notice on anything going on there. You're within 300 feet. But state your opinion. This has a long way to go and it'll twist and turn a little bit. Conditions and restrictions will be the big one that affects you the most. So I'll leave it at that. Before we adjourn, just a couple things, and I got actually an audience to hear it, not just streaming people. If you look directly behind you, looks like a giant quilt. That was actually the art project done at our cafe event September the 21st. Cafe stands for Culture, Art, Food, Entertainment, and the residents of Oak Creek made those different flags of the countries represented. It was kind of like folk fair. And our good friends at Eater Flag put that together for us. They actually ran the tent where not only the kids but the parents would come and make a representation of their culture, and then they stitched it together for us. It's probably the most unique art project we've had at Cafe. And it's pretty amazing what they do at Eater Flag. If you have not checked out Eater Flag's documentary, it was on Disney Plus. It's streaming. It's called The Flag Makers. It's a documentary about 40 minutes long, and it's all about a business right here in Oak Creek that makes most of the flags, all the flags in the United States mostly, and around the world. They're the largest manufacturer of flags and flagpoles in the United States, if not the world, right here in Oak Creek. So I urge you to check it out. Also, Halloween is coming up. It will be this year, October the 29th, 4 to 7 in Oak Creek. So as the little ghosts and goblins come to your door, please be generous. And also, Halloween Safe Site is taking place the same day, the 29th, down at the Oak Creek Historical Society on 15th and Forest Hill. They will be giving out candy in a safe environment as well, and a chance to check out all the historical sites down there. So I don't see you folks before Halloween. I wish you a happy Halloween. So with that, motion for adjournment.
Perillo moves to adjourn at 7:51.
Anna seconds.
Roll call. Chauncey, start us out.
Chandler, aye.
Anna, aye.
Perillo, aye.
Shinsky, aye.
David Chai.
Guzekowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
All right. Night, everybody. Thank you for coming out. Appreciate your patience.